He said it like a sentence. "Time's up, Ms. Gross." The words seemed to hang there, freezing between them, as he handed her the eviction notice. Neighbors peeked from behind frosted glass. A teenager held up his phone. The whole street watched as the man with money stood over the woman with memories. Rosalind's voice was soft, but steady. "It's always personal when it's my home, Mr. Jefferson." Williams gestured to a moving van creeping up the street. "You've had your grace period. This house isn't yours anymore." And then, a horn cut through the quiet. 2 cars appeared from opposite ends of the street, a silver Tesla and a black sedan. Doors opened. From the first, a woman in a charcoal coat stepped out, legal papers in hand. From the second, a man with a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Williams frowned. Rosalind turned, tears welling but her chin lifting. Vivian's voice carried through the snow. "Actually, Mr. Jefferson, this eviction violates state law." The crowd murmured. Phones rose higher. Williams blinked, his confidence faltering for the first time. The wind caught the eviction notice and tore it from his hand. It spun into the snow between them like a challenge. And in that instant, no one could tell who really held the power. Before we go any further, if stories of resilience and justice move you, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next changes everything. That morning, before the confrontation, Rosalind had done what she did every day for 30 years. She brewed a cup of chamomile, opened the curtains, and whispered thanks for another sunrise over the house she'd built on hope. Every corner held memory. Hand-drawn cards from former students, photographs of 2 bright-eyed foster children who became her own. Felix and Vivian. Her family. Her heart. Outside, snow gathered on the mailbox, the one she'd painted herself the year she made her final mortgage payment. She thought of her late husband's voice saying, "You built this home from nothing, Rosie. No one can take that from you." But she didn't yet know how wrong he'd be, and how far her children were willing to go to make it right. The morning air bit like glass as Rosalind Gross sat by the window, her tea untouched. Snow layered the old fence outside, muting the world in white. The hum of tires on asphalt grew louder, a deep, expensive engine that didn't belong in her quiet neighborhood. She didn't need to look. She knew that sound now. Williams Jefferson. He was always early when it came to bad news. The SUV stopped in front of her porch, its engine growling like it enjoyed her discomfort. Rosalind gripped her robe tighter and rose slowly, her knees aching. In the reflection of the glass, her face looked smaller than she remembered. Too much time alone, too many memories packed into too few rooms. 3 loud knocks. No greeting, no pause. Just the sharp rhythm of authority. Rosalind opened the door, and the cold rushed in like an uninvited guest. William stood there, 53, immaculately dressed, his black coat glinting with snowflakes that refused to melt. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Morning, Mrs. Gross," he said, the kind of polite that dripped with contempt. "You've had enough time. Today's the day." He waved a folder, thick with paperwork and stamped in red. "Mr. Jefferson, please," Rosalind began, voice trembling. "I just need a little." "No," he cut her off. "You've been late 6 months. Sent warnings. Notices. Even offered to buy the place from you at a fair rate. You refused." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I'm done waiting for sentiment. Business is business." Rosalind's jaw tightened. "This house isn't business to me. It's my life." He smirked. "Then maybe it's time you found a cheaper life." He signaled to the men behind him, movers in gray uniforms carrying boxes, their eyes downcast. They didn't want to be there. No one ever did when a scene like this happened. The first man stepped forward to the porch. Rosalind's heart stuttered. "Wait. Please, not yet. My children." Williams raised an eyebrow. "Children? The ones who never visit? If they cared, Mrs. Gross, they'd be here." But before she could answer, a sound cut through the air. a long, defiant horn blast. Everyone turned. 2 cars barreled down the icy street, headlights flashing, engines roaring louder than the storm. One, a black sedan, the other, a silver hybrid. They stopped hard, spraying snow over Williams's polished shoes. The doors flew open. A man in a navy trench coat stepped out first. Felix Gross. 33, sharp-featured, a quiet fury in his eyes. His scarf whipped in the wind as he adjusted his coat, scanning the porch like a soldier entering enemy ground. From the hybrid came a woman in a tailored gray coat, Vivian Gross. 36. Confident. Controlled. The kind of calm that made people nervous. She carried a leather folder tucked beneath her arm and a phone already recording. Rosalind's lips trembled into a whisper. "My babies." Williams scoffed. "Oh, this is cute. The cavalry's here." Vivian didn't even look at him. She walked straight to her mother, brushed the snow from her shoulder, and turned to the men on the porch. "Put the boxes down. Now." The movers hesitated. Something in her voice, authoritative, certain, made them pause. "Who are you to order my crew?" Williams barked. Felix stepped forward, his voice low and even. "The son of the woman you're harassing." "That's enough introduction, isn't it?" Vivian handed her phone to one of the bystanders filming. "Keep it rolling. We'll need the footage for the hearing." "Hearing?" Williams frowned. She flipped open the leather folder, revealing a stamped document. "Filed this morning. Emergency stay on eviction. Pending review of landlord misconduct. You should have checked your email, Mr. Jefferson." The color drained slightly from his face. "That's impossible. The court's closed today." "Not for federal appeals," she said. "You've been reported for falsifying repair invoices and overcharging an elderly tenant. That qualifies for injunction review." Williams's jaw flexed. "This is bluffing. You can't." Felix cut in. "Oh, it's not a bluff." He tapped his phone, pulling up a screen full of images. "You billed her twice for the same roof repair. Claimed mold remediation that never happened. And here's my favorite. You used her rent money to pay your own property tax. We pulled the bank records." Williams blinked, trying to calculate which defense to grab first. Vivian stepped closer, her voice cold as the wind. "You thought she was alone. That no one would notice. That's what you do, isn't it? Target the elderly. Push them out. Flip the houses. Profit off their silence." The crowd was growing now, neighbors drawn by the noise and the flashing phones. Williams straightened, trying to regain control. "Enough. I don't care who you think you are. The sheriff will enforce this. You're trespassing on a legal eviction." Felix smirked. "Funny thing about that." From the driveway, another car rolled up, slow, deliberate. The driver stepped out and adjusted his jacket, sheriff's badge gleaming on his chest. Williams exhaled in relief. "Finally, do your job." But the sheriff's eyes met Vivian's. "Ms. Gross, got your message. The court documents check out. Until the hearing, no eviction proceeds. You understand, Mr. Jefferson?" The landlord froze. "That can't be." The sheriff raised a hand. "You want to argue, take it downtown. But you're not touching this woman's property today." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Williams's face twisted. "You can't just ambush me like this." Vivian's expression softened for the first time, turning toward her mother. "It's over for now, Mama. You're safe." But Rosalind shook her head, tears in her eyes. "No, baby. This isn't over. Men like him, they don't stop. They just wait." Felix nodded grimly. "Then we'll be ready next time." He turned back to Williams. "You wanted a fight? You picked the wrong family." Williams opened his mouth, but no words came. The crowd was recording every angle, every expression. His reputation, his so-called power, was slipping with every flash of a camera. Vivian handed the sheriff another paper. "And that's the complaint for elder abuse and harassment. Filed 5 minutes ago." The sheriff took it silently. Williams's hand shook as he adjusted his coat, his pride collapsing under the weight of witnesses. For a moment, he looked less like a landlord and more like what he truly was, a man cornered by his own greed. Rosalind reached for Felix's arm, her voice barely above a whisper. "You came home." He smiled softly. "You called. We heard." The wind howled through the street, lifting snow across the porch like confetti. Vivian took her mother's hand, guiding her back inside as neighbors began clapping. Slow at first, then rising in rhythm, echoing through the block. Williams's face hardened. He turned without a word, stomping through the snow toward his SUV. Cameras followed. Someone shouted, "Justice for Miss Rosie." Another voice added, "We got your back, man." Rosalind paused at the doorway, watching him retreat. Her eyes, red but fierce, locked on his back as if memorizing the moment. "Let him leave," she murmured. "He'll see us again soon." Felix's voice carried softly beside her. "Yeah. Next time we won't just stop him. We'll take everything he built off our pain." Outside, Williams Jefferson climbed into his SUV, the applause of the neighbors still echoing faintly through the snow. He didn't realize yet, this wasn't just about a house. It was about what happens when the people you underestimated come home. The snow outside muffled everything but memory. Inside, warmth hummed through the small house, a kettle whistling faintly, the smell of lemon oil and cinnamon in the air. Rosalind sat by the window, her cane resting against the chair. Vivian and Felix had gone to the study, making calls, scanning files. But for the first time that day, silence felt safe again. Her gaze drifted to the mantel, to a line of faded photographs. Children with missing teeth, school uniforms, graduation caps. Faces that had once filled her kitchen with noise and light. The house was still now, but it remembered. 25 years earlier. The same porch creaked under a younger Rosalind's steps, paint still bright, laughter spilling from the front door. A group of children sat around her kitchen table, textbooks open, pencils scratching across lined paper. "Eyes up, Marcus," she said, gentle but firm. "If you can't read the word, sound it out. Don't hide from it." He frowned at the page. "But it's hard, Miss Rose." She smiled. "Hard is what makes you better. You only quit when it doesn't matter. And this matters." The boy nodded, his lips moving soundlessly as he tried again. She watched until his face lit up with recognition. "Neighbor," he shouted. "It says neighbor." The room erupted in small cheers. Rosalind laughed, clapping once. "See, you already know how to find your way home." Her tutoring program had started small, just a promise to help kids who'd fallen behind. But it grew quickly, spreading by whispers and gratitude. The Gross house became a haven, where no child was too poor, too lost, or too broken to start again. And then came them. It was a spring afternoon when she first met Vivian and Felix. The foster system van had pulled up unannounced. A social worker stepped out with 2 children, one tall and guarded, the other silent, clutching a book to his chest. "This is temporary," the woman said. Their last placement fell through. Vivian had been 13, sharp-eyed and brittle from too many broken promises. Felix, 9, barely spoke at all. Rosalind remembered crouching down to meet their gaze. "You hungry?" she asked. "I made cornbread. Still warm." Vivian shrugged. "We're fine." "Then you can eat it anyway," Rosalind replied. No sense letting it go to waste. It wasn't warmth that melted their walls. It was consistency. Meals at 6. Homework before TV. "Yes, ma'am," and "please" spoken like armor that turned into habit. Vivian's walls took months to crumble. Felix's took years. But slowly, they began to belong. Vivian started helping Rosalind with the younger students, red penning essays and quoting legal arguments from books she barely understood yet. Felix, curious and quiet, fixed the old computer Rosalind had given up on. By the time he was 12, he'd taught himself to code. And one night, years later, Rosalind stood in the courthouse, signing the papers that made them hers. "Are you sure?" the clerk asked. "They're almost grown." Rosalind smiled softly. "So am I. But family isn't about timing. It's about choice." Vivian emerged from the study, pulling her hair loose from its bun. She looked exhausted but composed, always composed. "The injunction's holding for now," she said. "But Williams will fight back. He won't just disappear." Felix leaned against the doorway, typing on his laptop. "Already working on it. His shell companies are dirty. He's been laundering development grants into private accounts." Rosalind looked between them, proud and worried in equal measure. "You two shouldn't have to fight my battles." Vivian smiled faintly. "You fought ours first." The words sat heavy between them, a truth both simple and vast. Felix closed his laptop and sat beside her. "Remember when you used to say, 'The house doesn't raise itself, the people inside do'?" Rosalind chuckled softly. "You remember that?" "I remember everything," he said quietly. "The nights you stayed up marking papers so we could keep the lights on. The way you made us believe we weren't charity, we were family." Her eyes misted. "You were never charity, baby. You were the reason I kept breathing." For a moment, the room was just warmth and silence, the kind that comes when pain and love meet and recognize each other. Then Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced down and frowned. "It's from a contact at the county office," she said. "Williams filed a new motion. Claims Mom's original lease was invalid, and that the property belongs to his corporation outright." Felix swore under his breath. "He's doubling down." Rosalind sighed. "Of course he is. Men like him don't see people. They see numbers." Vivian looked toward the window, where snow continued to fall over the yard. "Then it's time to remind him what he's up against." Rosalind tilted her head. "And what's that, baby?" Vivian's voice steadied. "A family that doesn't break." That night, the house felt alive again. Vivian spread legal documents across the kitchen table. Felix set up routers and screens, the glow reflecting off his determined face. Rosalind brewed tea and hummed an old hymn under her breath, the same one she used to sing when the children were sick or scared. Outside, Maple Drive slept quietly beneath its white blanket. But inside the Gross home a storm was forming, not of rage but of resolve. Because this house had never been just brick and wood. It was the place where broken kids found roots, and a tired woman found purpose. It was the heart of everything they'd become. And if Williams Jefferson thought he could take that away, he was about to learn exactly what this house had built. The city glittered like a crown of ice. From the top floor of Jefferson Holdings, Williams Jefferson watched the skyline through floor-to-ceiling glass. Below, traffic pulsed, a mechanical heartbeat he'd learned to control. Control. That was the word that built him. And it was slipping. He stood in his Navy suit, the one tailored in Milan, the one that fit like armor. The snow outside blurred the horizon, turning the glass into a mirror. For a moment, he didn't see the city. He saw himself, and hated what stared back. On his desk, the eviction file lay open. Rosalind Gross, 67. Retired teacher. Tenant since 1993. A photo was clipped to the page. A woman standing in front of a modest brick house, smiling faintly, one hand on a cane. The image irritated him. That smile, patient, unbothered, as if she knew something he didn't. "She's still there?" he asked, voice flat. Across from him, his assistant shifted uncomfortably. "The sheriff delayed the procedure, sir. A court injunction was filed this morning." "By who?" "Vivian Gross. Her daughter. She's a civil rights attorney." He exhaled through his nose. Of course she is. And her son, Felix Gross, is a tech consultant. He's making noise online. The video's already circulating. Hashtag Stop the Eviction is trending. Williams's jaw tightened. Public sympathy is temporary. Outrage burns fast. I'll own that property by spring. The assistant hesitated. Sir, maybe it's worth reviewing the... Reviewing what? He snapped. A lease she barely deserves? That house should have been torn down years ago. He turned away, staring out the window again. His reflection split between the snow and the city lights. One man divided by ambition and bitterness. 18 years ago. The Jefferson estate. Summer. A younger Williams walks the manicured grounds with his father, Harold Jefferson, an aging magnate whose once commanding voice had softened with illness. You'll inherit the properties when I'm gone, Harold said, coughing lightly. But remember, Will, they're not just assets. They're people's homes. Williams frowned. Homes don't pay interest, father. Harold smiled sadly. Neither does pride. They stopped before a small guest house near the back of the property. Paint peeling, flowers in the window. Rosalind Gross stepped out, wiping her hands on an apron, carrying a tray of tea. Afternoon, gentlemen, she greeted warmly. The doctor says you need rest, Mr. Jefferson. I made chamomile. Harold's eyes softened. Rosalind, you always know what I need. Williams remembered the flicker of gratitude in his father's face, gratitude that never seemed to appear when he was in the room. He remembered the envy blooming cold and deep. Present day. Williams's phone buzzed. He glanced down, a text from Victor, one of his property scouts. Media swarming the Gross property. Sheriffs backing off. You want us to push through. He typed back quickly. No. Not yet. Let them talk. I'll crush them with paperwork, not headlines. He paused, then added. And find me everything on those kids. Both of them. He dropped the phone onto the desk, leaning back in his chair. The city stretched endlessly before him, but all he could see was that small brick house, her house, standing defiantly against the storm. How does she still win? He muttered. A voice echoed in his mind, faint and mocking, his father's. Because she's rich in what you never valued, son. Grace. He rubbed his temple hard, trying to erase the sound. Grace was weakness. Grace didn't build empires. He'd built his on precision, performance, and control. And if that meant crushing a retired schoolteacher to prove it, so be it. Later that night, Williams sat alone in his penthouse. No music. No warmth. Just the low hum of the city below. He poured himself a drink, ice clinking against glass, and turned on the news. Rosalind's face filled the screen. Older, tired, but steady. Her daughter stood beside her, addressing the cameras. This isn't just about a house. It's about the promise that no one should lose their home to greed. The reporter's voice followed. Support is growing for Ms. Gross, whose children claim new legal evidence could overturn the eviction entirely. Williams froze, drink halfway to his lips. New legal evidence. He set the glass down slowly. What are you planning, Vivian Gross? The camera cut to Felix. Calm, confident, his words measured. Some truths can't stay buried, especially when they're written into the foundation. Williams's fingers tightened on the glass until it cracked. He turned off the TV and stood at the window again. Snow fell over the city, silent and merciless. Down below, lights from a dozen construction cranes flickered like tiny fires. His empire, his legacy. But somewhere beneath that frozen skyline, a small brick house refused to bow. And for the first time in years, Williams Jefferson felt the faint tremor of fear beneath his anger. The sky hung heavy with snow. By noon, the Jefferson estate looked like a fortress carved from glass and frost. Each window a cold eye, watching, waiting. Down the private drive, a silver SUV crept forward through the storm. Inside sat Vivian Gross, hands tight on the steering wheel, her mother beside her in a thick wool coat. In the back seat, Felix tapped furiously on his laptop, eyes darting between screens of code, live streams, and comment threads. "They're watching," he murmured. 500,000 views already. Hashtag Justice for Rosalind is trending worldwide. Vivian exhaled. Good. Let them watch. Rosalind looked out the window, her old neighborhood fading behind them, the skyscrapers rising ahead. She wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. She had built classrooms, not empires. Raised children, not corporations. But somehow, she had become the final obstacle in a billionaire's crusade for dominance. As they reached the gate, 2 guards stepped forward. "Private property," one said stiffly. "No visitors without appointment." Vivian rolled down her window, calm but firm. "Tell Mr. Jefferson the Gross family is here." A pause. One guard's jaw tightened, the name clearly recognized. Then a buzz. The gate slid open. Inside the estate, William stood before the mirrored elevator, fixing his tie. His reflection looked flawless, but his pulse wasn't. Victor's text had come minutes earlier. "They're here. All 3. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Finally," he whispered. The elevator doors opened to the grand foyer. Marble floors, glass chandeliers, and the faint scent of expensive indifference. Vivian led her mother inside, heels echoing like defiance. Felix followed, camera recording discreetly from his jacket lapel. Williams descended the curved staircase like a judge entering his own trial. "Ms. Gross," he said evenly, "you've made quite the spectacle." Rosalind raised her head, her voice calm. "I didn't ask for a spectacle, Mr. Jefferson. I asked for time." Vivian stepped forward. "And legal accountability." Williams smirked. "Ah yes, the lawyer daughter. I've read your petitions. Passionate if naive." "Truth isn't naive," Vivian said, unblinking. "It's patient." Felix's quiet laugh cut through the tension. "You'd know a lot about patience, Mr. Jefferson. You've been waiting 18 years to finish what your father couldn't." The smirk faltered. Williams motioned toward the sitting room. "Let's not play courtroom in my foyer. Come in." The room was all luxury and sterility. Leather, glass, precision. A place where emotion was meant to die quietly. As they sat, Felix opened his laptop again. A faint green light blinked on. Williams noticed. "Recording me?" Felix didn't look up. "Transparency, Mr. Jefferson. Something your empire's allergic to." Williams leaned forward. "You think public noise changes law? You'll lose the case in court. You'll lose the House. And the crowd that cheers for you today will be bored tomorrow." Vivian set a folder on the glass table. "Then maybe this will keep their interest." She slid it toward him. He opened it, and froze. Inside were old property ledgers, his father's signature, and a notarized letter. Letter 2007. "I hereby confirm that the Jefferson Foundation holds no legal claim to the property on 12 Beechwood Lane, as it was paid in full by Rosalind Gross through private arrangement. She remains the rightful owner. Harold Jefferson." Williams's throat tightened. "That's forged." Felix turned the laptop toward him, displaying a live blockchain verification. "Authenticated yesterday by the county archives. It's real." Vivian added softly, "Your father wasn't greedy, Mr. Jefferson. He made a promise. You broke it." Silence swallowed the room. Outside, snow hit the glass like whispers. Williams stood, pacing. "My father was sentimental. He let loyalty blind him. I don't make that mistake." Rosalind met his eyes for the first time. "You mistake loyalty for weakness, Will. But it's what keeps people from turning into ghosts." He looked at her, really looked. The woman who once brought tea to his father when he was sick. The one his father trusted more than him. He hated that he still remembered her kindness. "You should have stayed gone," he said finally. "And you," Rosalind said, voice steady, "should have learned the difference between empire and emptiness." Suddenly, Victor burst in, breathless. "Sir, the media's outside. They know. Someone leaked the letter." Felix closed his laptop with a faint click. Someone always does. Williams turned to the window, and for the first time saw his empire cracking from the outside in. Reporters swarmed the gates, drones hovered above the mansion, and the Gross family stood calm in the center of it all. Vivian rose. "You can still fix this. Admit the truth. Honor your father's word." Williams said nothing. He only stared at the old letter in his trembling hand. The ink faded but unbroken, like a ghost of the man who built his fortune on integrity. As they turned to leave, Rosalind paused at the doorway. "You have all the marble in the world," she said softly, "but none of it will keep you warm." She walked out into the snow, her children beside her, their figures fading into white light. Williams remained alone in the silence, the letter burning in his hand like a verdict. Outside, camera flashes turned the storm into lightning. And for the first time in his life, the empire of ego began to melt. The world outside was a storm of headlines and flashbulbs. But inside Rosalind's home, the quiet returned, a fragile, uncertain peace. She sat at her kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling between her hands. The letter from Harold Jefferson lay open beside it, the paper trembling slightly in the draft from the window. Each word felt like an echo, of promises, of kindness, of things lost. Felix moved through the house checking locks, still wired from the confrontation. Vivian was on the phone with the sheriff's department, confirming the suspension order. Their mother, though, stared at the table, somewhere far away. "You okay, Mama?" Felix asked softly. "I will be," she said, her voice distant. Just didn't expect to hear his name again. Harold Jefferson. The man who once called her the only decent thing that ever happened in this house. Flashback. 20 years earlier. The Jefferson mansion hadn't changed much. The same white pillars, the same marble steps. Only then it was warm. Because she was there. Rosalind, a schoolteacher by day and caretaker by heart, had been hired to look after Harold after his stroke. He was proud and stubborn, but she was patient. The kind of patient that could melt iron. "You read like you mean it," Harold would say as she read to him from Baldwin and Hughes. "Because they meant every word," she'd reply. He would laugh, a brittle sound softened by her presence. On Christmas Eve, she brought him soup and found him staring at old family photos. Williams wasn't in any of them. "He stopped visiting," Harold said. "Said my house smelled like regret." "Maybe he's hurting too," she offered. "Maybe," Harold sighed. "But hurt isn't an excuse to lose your soul." That night, he pressed an envelope into her hand. "You've given me something my money never could, peace. Keep this place, Rosalind. Promise me you'll never let it fall into greed's hands." She had tried to refuse. He insisted. When he died months later, she paid off the final mortgage payment, and thought the promise was kept. She didn't know his son would return decades later to finish what envy started. Back to the present. Vivian hung up the phone. Temporary injunction confirmed. They can't touch the property till the court hearing. Rosalind nodded but didn't smile. Williams won't stop. He's his father's son, just without the heart. Vivian leaned on the counter, watching her. "There's something you're not saying." Rosalind hesitated. Then, quietly, "When Harold got sick, he asked me to call Williams. Begged me to. Said he didn't want to die angry." Vivian frowned. "And I did," Rosalind said. "Every week." Williams never answered. But one day he showed up anyway, just stood in the hallway, staring at his father like a stranger. Another flashback. Rosalind had been reading by the fire when the door opened. William stood there in a long coat, dripping rainwater and resentment. "So this is what you've become," he said coldly. "A nurse for a dying man." "I'm his friend," Rosalind replied. "You're his replacement." He looked at his father, frail but smiling faintly at the sight of him. "Will," Harold rasped, "thank you for coming." "You left me nothing to come back to," William said. "You never stayed long enough to see what was left." Rosalind remembered that night vividly, the way the two men's pride filled the room like smoke. When William stormed out, Harold's heart monitor spiked. Rosalind rushed to his side, but he only whispered one thing before losing consciousness. "Tell him. I forgave him." Present day. Felix listened quietly as his mother spoke. Vivian stood frozen, her usual composure cracked by empathy. Rosalind sighed. "I tried to tell him today that his father loved him, but he's built too many walls. He can't hear anything but his own bitterness." Vivian spoke softly. "And yet, Mama, you still forgive him." Rosalind smiled sadly. "Forgiveness isn't for him. It's for me. For you. For this house. Hate doesn't feed a soul." Meanwhile, across town, William sat alone in his office. Lights off, TV screens glowing with the story he couldn't escape. Local hero evades eviction. Billionaire under investigation. Each headline hit like a hammer. He picked up the letter again, Harold's handwriting trembling with age. He whispered into the darkness, "You always loved her more." Then he reached for the glass of scotch beside him, but his hand shook too much to lift it. The camera pans from his lonely penthouse to the small glowing warmth of Rosalind's house. Inside, Felix closed his laptop. Vivian took off her coat. Rosalind poured fresh tea. For the first time in days, there was laughter again. Fragile, real, human. But just as the peace settled, Felix's phone vibrated. He frowned. "Viv, you might want to see this." She leaned over. On the screen, a new legal filing. Jefferson Holdings versus Rosalind Gross. Vivian's jaw tightened. "He's appealing the injunction. He's not done." Rosalind looked at the snow falling outside. Her voice was calm, almost resigned. "Then we'll do what we've always done," she said. "Stand together." The following morning began in silence. No reporters, no shouting, just the hush of winter air pressing against the old wooden windows. Inside, Felix sat hunched over his laptop, fingers typing furiously. He had been awake all night, digging through digital archives and property records. Across from him, Vivian sat with her briefcase open, legal documents scattered like puzzle pieces. And in the corner, Rosalind Gross, wrapped in her navy shawl, watched them with the kind of tired peace that comes after a storm, but not before another one. "Mama," Felix murmured without looking up, "did Harold ever talk about a foundation?" "A what?" she asked. "A foundation. Something he planned before he died." Rosalind frowned. "He mentioned wanting to create one for local teachers. Said he'd name it after his late wife." "Why?" Felix turned the screen toward her. An official seal blinked back. The H. Jefferson Educational Trust. Filed 2003. Active. Funded. Updated last month. Vivian straightened. Updated? By who? Felix's eyes flickered. Williams Jefferson. As trustee. Discovery. Vivian reached for the files. "That's impossible. If the trust is still active then," Felix finished her thought, "then this property might not even belong to him. It might belong to the trust." Rosalind blinked. "You mean?" Vivian smiled, but it wasn't joy, it was shock turning into strategy. "If this house was ever donated or transferred under the trust's assets, Williams can't evict you. He'd be violating federal trust law." Felix clicked again. A PDF loaded. Deed transfer, 2003. Owner, H. Jefferson Educational Trust. Occupant and beneficiary, Rosalind M. Gross. A beat of silence filled the room. Then Rosalind whispered, "Oh, Harold, You really did keep your promise. Cut to Williams's office. Williams Jefferson sat behind his mahogany desk, phone pressed to his ear. His lawyer's voice came through, clipped and uneasy. Sir, we've got a problem. There's been a record retrieval request from the state archives, linked to your late father's trust. So, Williams muttered. So, the house you're evicting isn't actually yours. It's under the H. Jefferson Educational Trust. You're its trustee, not its owner. That can't be right. It is. Which means legally, you've been trying to evict the trust's own beneficiary. Williams's hand froze. His reflection in the office glass looked older, heavier, haunted. For the first time, power looked like fear. The courthouse steps. 2 days later. Cold wind. Reporters gathered. Rosalind, Felix, and Vivian approached the courthouse together. Behind them, neighbors and supporters held signs. Justice for Ms. Gross. The air buzzed with moral electricity. Williams stood near the doors, his usual arrogance muted by sleepless eyes. His lawyer tried to keep him composed, but he was unraveling. When Rosalind reached him, she paused. Mr. Jefferson, she said softly, we don't have to do this. Not like this. He looked at her with a mix of shame and pride. You took everything my father meant for me. Rosalind shook her head. No. I kept what he wanted for everyone. Vivian stepped forward, holding up a folder. This is your father's original trust deed. It proves Ms. Gross was never your tenant. She's the trust's lifetime beneficiary. You, Mr. Jefferson, violated your fiduciary duty. This isn't eviction, it's breach of trust. The cameras clicked. Reporters gasped. Williams's lawyer blanched. This can't be used here. It's private estate documentation. Vivian's smile was surgical. Public record, Mr. Grant. Filed with the county registrar. Checkmate. The courtroom. Inside, Judge Moran flipped through the documents, expression tightening with every page. Mr. Jefferson, she said sternly, as trustee of your father's foundation, you were obligated to protect the assets and beneficiaries. Instead, you attempted to dispossess one. That is an abuse of power. The words hit like hammers. Rosalind sat silently, hands clasped. Vivian stood behind her, calm but burning with quiet pride. Felix watched Williams, whose eyes were downcast. No more bluster, just the hollow recognition of defeat. This court, Judge Moran continued, hereby reinstates Ms. Gross's full right of occupancy and orders a review of the trust's management. Effective immediately, you are suspended as trustee, Mr. Jefferson. The gavel fell. The crowd erupted. Outside the courthouse, snow began to fall again. Rosalind stepped out into the white blur, tears glistening against her cheeks. Felix threw an arm around her shoulders. Vivian exhaled deeply, finally smiling. Reporters swarmed with questions. Ms. Gross, how do you feel? Do you have a message for Mr. Jefferson? What's next for you? She paused at the top of the courthouse steps, the crowd waiting. Then she said simply, I feel free. My children stood for me, but this fight was never just about me. It was about what's right. About promises kept, even from the grave. The cameras flashed. It became the quote that would define the story. Printed, shared, viral. Later that week, Rosalind visited the Jefferson estate one last time. Williams was there, packing boxes. The mansion that once loomed over the city now looked smaller, lonelier. Why did you come? He asked bitterly. To give you something, she said, handing him a sealed envelope. Another lawsuit? No. A letter. From your father. I found it in the back of my Bible. He hesitated, then opened it. Harold's handwriting trembled across the page. If you're reading this, Will, it means you came back too late. I leave you not my fortune, but my forgiveness. The woman in that house. She is the best part of what I wanted to be. Protect her and you'll save yourself. Williams read it twice. His lips trembled. Rosalind turned to leave. I loved him too, she said softly. But love means letting go of what should have never been yours to own. For the first time, he didn't argue. He just nodded, tears silently tracing down his face. Weeks later, Rosalind's house was restored with funds from the Jefferson Trust, this time managed jointly by Vivian and Felix. The foundation's first scholarship was awarded in Harold's name, for underprivileged students in their community. At the ceremony, Rosalind looked out at the crowd. Her children stood on either side of her, proud and whole. Somewhere deep inside she felt Harold smiling, not from wealth, but from peace. And as she held the microphone she said, "Sometimes family isn't the one we're born into. It's the one that shows up when the world tries to take everything away." The crowd erupted. The camera panned to the sky, snow still falling, glistening over the house that once symbolized loss, now glowing with light. Winter loosened its grip by the time the first daffodils pushed through the frozen soil. The snow that once swallowed Rosalind's driveway had melted into a thin shimmer of water, catching the sunlight like glass. The house, her house, stood freshly painted, its porch rails gleaming white again. But the biggest change wasn't the color. It was the feeling. The home that had once been a battleground was now a beacon. Children laughed in the yard. A banner stretched across the porch read, "The Harold Jefferson Foundation, Grand Reopening and Community Scholarship Day." Felix adjusted the sound system near the steps, testing the microphone with his usual focus. Vivian was on her phone, juggling interviews and schedules. And Rosalind sat by the window, sipping tea and smiling as neighbors began to gather. "You think he'll come?" she asked softly. "Who?" Felix replied, though he knew. "Williams." Vivian exhaled. "He was invited. Whether he accepts, that's on him." Rosalind nodded, her gaze drifting to the garden. "I hope he does. A soul can't heal from the shadows." By noon, the small street buzzed with life. Local reporters set up cameras, the mayor's car pulled up, and former students, some now teachers themselves, stood in clusters, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Vivian took the mic first. Her voice carried authority, but her tone was gentle. This home once faced erasure. Today it becomes a monument to second chances. The Harold Jefferson Foundation will now provide scholarships for underprivileged youth and mentorship for first-time homeowners. My mother taught us that when you protect one home, you protect an entire community. Applause rose. Felix followed, showing a digital slideshow projected onto a nearby wall. Photos of the house through the decades, children Rosalind once tutored, Harold Jefferson's old handwritten notes about faith in small places. Then, as if on cue, a car door shut in the distance. Heads turned. A familiar figure in a dark coat stepped forward, slow and uncertain. Williams Jefferson. The crowd went silent. Vivian's shoulders stiffened. Felix's jaw tightened. But Rosalind simply stood. The old woman walked down the steps with the grace of someone who had already forgiven. Williams stopped at the gate. He looked smaller now. No entourage, no lawyer, no shield of arrogance. Just a man hollowed out by realization. "Ms. Gross," he began, voice rough, "I wasn't sure you'd want me here." "You were part of this house before you tried to take it," she said softly. "You have a right to see what became of it. I don't deserve. None of us do. That's why grace exists." She took his hand, weathered skin meeting trembling fingers. And for a moment, the air shifted. The cameras lowered. Even the wind stilled. "Your father would have wanted you here," she said. "Maybe," he whispered, eyes wet. "But not like this. Then start different. End better." The ceremony. When Rosalind stepped back to the mic, Williams lingered behind the crowd, watching. She smiled at the rows of students before her. Faces full of hope. "This house was almost lost," she began, "but what was found is far greater. We learned that legacy isn't about ownership. It's about stewardship. You don't own what you haven't earned. You protect what you've been given. Her voice carried over the crowd. And if one elderly woman with a cane and 2 stubborn children could hold the line, then maybe all of US can hold it for someone else. Tears glimmered in the sunlight. Felix filmed quietly, knowing the speech would soon go viral again. Behind them, Williams placed a check into the donation box. Anonymous, but signed only with the initials WJ. Evening. After the ceremony, the crowd thinned. Fairy lights twinkled along the porch. Rosalind sat on the swing where the story began, her cane leaning against the rail. Vivian joined her, barefoot now, her heels abandoned somewhere near the garden path. Felix sat on the steps, still scrolling through the hundreds of messages pouring in. "Mom," Felix said, reading one aloud. "Listen to this," a woman from Chicago wrote. "Your story helped me stop my landlord from kicking out my grandma. You made us fight back." "You see." Rosalind smiled. "One stand can ripple through a world that forgot how to care." Vivian leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "You did that." "No," Rosalind whispered. "We did." A hush settled over them. The kind of peace that feels earned. Later that night, Rosalind walked out to the edge of the yard. The wind was soft now, carrying faint laughter from the nearby houses. She placed her hand against the porch beam, the same one she once leaned on when facing eviction. A brass key hung from a small nail there, tied with a frayed blue ribbon. Her lucky key, the one she had clutched on that frozen morning when the word eviction nearly ended her story. Now it gleamed in the moonlight like a medal. Felix and Vivian joined her. They stood together in silence. "You keeping it there?" Felix asked. "Yes," Rosalind said. "Not as a reminder of what was taken, but of what was never theirs to begin with." She turned to them, her eyes warm and steady. "Promise me this, when I'm gone, you keep this home open. Let it be a place for anyone who's ever been told they don't belong." Vivian nodded. "We promise." The porch light flickered once, just like it had the day the children first arrived, and stayed glowing. They tried to evict an elderly black woman. But what they didn't know was that home isn't made of walls. It's made of people who refuse to be erased. As the screen fades, the hashtag appears again. Hashtag justice for Rosalind. Hashtag home is hope. The camera opens on morning lights spilling over the street. The neighborhood has changed. Newer roofs, repainted fences, gardens thriving again. But at the end of the lane stands the same modest brick house, now trimmed with golden blossoms. A wooden sign swings gently by the mailbox. Gross family home, since 1993. The camera drifts closer. The front porch glows in soft sunlight. A small plaque by the steps reads, "This home stands as a reminder that justice begins with courage." Inside, Rosalind Gross moves slowly but gracefully, her cane now more a companion than a crutch. She pours tea into a floral cup, humming an old hymn. His eye is on the sparrow. The melody drifts out the window into the blooming yard. Felix's silver Tesla hums into the driveway, followed by Vivian's sedan. They step out, greeting volunteers setting up tables on the lawn. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of the Harold Jefferson Foundation, and the event has become something of a tradition. Part memorial, part community gathering. Vivian carries a box of scholarship envelopes. Felix holds a sleek new tablet, the Foundation's digital portal for student applications. "Mama," Vivian calls as she enters. "We're starting setup early this year." "Good," Rosalind smiles. "The world's moving faster, we might as well keep up." Felix kisses her cheek. "You trending again, you know." Trending. Hashtag home is hope hit 2 million views this morning. Someone used your quote for a housing justice campaign in D.C. "Oh mercy," she laughs softly. "All I did was tell the truth." A letter from the past. Vivian sets a white envelope on the table. Thick, sealed with an embossed crest. "This came yesterday. From Williams, Jefferson. Rosalind pauses, her hands still. Open it. Vivian breaks the seal carefully. Inside, a short letter, written in clean blue ink. Dear Ms. Gross, some debts can't be repaid with money, only with change. I've sold the last of my father's holdings and donated the proceeds to the foundation. You were right. Legacy isn't what we keep, it's what we leave behind. Thank you for teaching me that before it was too late. W.J. A silence follows. Felix exhales. He actually did it. Rosalind nods slowly. Redemption's a quiet visitor. It doesn't knock, it just arrives. She folds the letter neatly, places it in her Bible. Midday gathering. The yard fills with people. Neighbors, reporters, former students, new homeowners. A young woman stands by the mic, holding back tears as she speaks. If not for the scholarship, I'd have dropped out of school. Mrs. Gross, you didn't just save your house. You saved my dream. Applause swells. Rosalind listens from her porch, her eyes glistening. Vivian takes the stage next. My mother taught us that you don't need power to make change. Just faith, and the courage to stand when it's hardest. She glances at Rosalind. Everything we built here began with one word, home. Later, as the event winds down, Rosalind sits alone on the porch swing. She runs her hand across the brass key tied with the frayed blue ribbon, still hanging from its nail. Flashback visuals ripple through. The eviction notice spinning in the wind. Vivian standing tall in the snow. Felix's laptop glowing against the cold. The sheriff lowering the paper. Williams walking away as the world turned toward truth. Back to present. Rosalind smiles. That storm taught me something, she murmurs. Some houses stand because of nails and beams. Others, because someone refused to move. She looks up as a group of children run past the gate. Laughing, backpacks bouncing. One stops and waves. Bye, Miss Rosalind. See you next week for reading club. You better bring your homework this time, she calls, laughing. The sky deepens into gold and violet. Vivian and Felix sit beside their mother. Fireflies wink in the yard. The street is peaceful again. You ever think about selling? Felix teases. This house. Rosalind chuckles. Child, this house sells faith by the square foot. They all laugh, warm, genuine, unguarded. A soft breeze lifts the blue ribbon. The key catches the last light of day. Vivian leans her head on Rosalind's shoulder. Felix records a short video for the Foundation's social page. Rosalind's voice, calm and sure, narrates over the final montage. They tried to evict me once. Said this house was worth more as land than as a life. But value isn't written in contracts. It's carved in the hands that build, the prayers that hold, the children that return. This house wasn't built on money. It was built on faith and family. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.